welcome to another episode of the Area 210 podcast. Today, we're going to be joined by the one and only Paul Garcia here. Paul, you have a new podcast I want you to go ahead and let us know about.
Yes, thank you, Joe. It's good to see you, man. It's been a while since we've talked. So my new podcast is called the Spot Up Pod. So again, if you want to check that on your podcast feed, it's called the Spot Up Pod. And then I have a Substack newsletter where I do all my written work called the Spot Up Shot newsletter. So again, the spotupshot.com. It has all the information there. And then for those of you that follow my work when I used to work over at Project Spurs, very similar type of style here, just a little bit different as well, because now I have like total control of like what I want to put on the site, on my newsletter and on the podcast.
Yeah, so we have some news to get into, but first, I want to go ahead and get your thoughts, your experience that you've had there over at the, covering the Spurs Media Day. How was that like, being able to communicate, not with just the other journalists there, but being able to talk with the Spurs players, being able to talk with some of the coaches, seeing some of the chemistry, that kind of thing. How was Spurs Media Day?
Yeah, it was a fun time. Just like you mentioned, it was good for me. Like all my friends are in the media, so getting to catch up with a lot of people there, and then just the fact that the Spurs provided 6 players to talk to us as well as Coach Pop, and it was so some players I'm kind of used to. Their interview formats such as Pop, such as Wemby, Devin Vassell, those kind of players. But it was good to hear from like Chris Paul for the first time, to hear from Harrison Barnes, Stephon Castle, or he didn't speak on day 1, but he spoke on day 2. So just some of those new players, and just to kind of hear about these new players, because we haven't actually seen them on the court with the old Spurs players from the previous team. So that was a good environment to see. And it was very much a very traditional media day where, you have each player coming up and doing their interviews, while in the background you have, the photo shoots going on for the future, photo stuff that's going to happen for the team.
Yeah, so one of the things that I know Spurs fans were excited about, and I know you got to see this firsthand, it's the admiration that it seemed like some of the younger players had for both CP3 and Harrison Barnes, kind of like a weight lifted off their shoulders in a sense, that now they're excited that they're going to have some floor generals out there. And they were just so excited. You could tell that the energy was at a high level because of what not only Harrison Barnes, but what CP3 brings as far as the knowledge they're willing to impart into this young Spurs core. Tell us a little bit about that. Like, what did they say about them?
Yeah, no, they're just talking about how it's obvious. I mean, this feels like a different training camp to the players because they have those veterans out there. I mean, Pop's not telling Chris and Harrison to say these kind of things. Like, they just do that because they've been in the league for over 10 plus years. And that was something that all the players mentioned. I mean, they're just more comfortable out there because they have these veterans, and these veterans are teaching them at the same time. They're not just saying, "Hey, you did that wrong. You did that wrong." They're actually showing them, "Hey, do this here, do this. Work on this here." So they're imparting their knowledge. A lot of the young players that really want to take their game to another level, such as Devin Vassell, such as someone like Stephon Castle, they're watching a playmaking guard like Chris Paul, like really just watching what he does at all times out on the floor. And then something Harrison Barnes mentioned is that, like, just coming into a young team, knowing that this is a very young team, he mentioned the word establishing habits. So again, they have these key words, these buzzwords, Chris and Harrison, that they're using. And even though we couldn't hear the Spurs send out some practice footage on Tuesday, it's just kind of some B-roll footage, but you can see there's a bunch of young Spurs, like 5 or 6 players all around Harrison Barnes. He's kind of directing them. And you see a lot of clips of like Chris Paul telling Wemby something or telling somebody else something, kind of just like they're on the side. And so again, the Spurs kind of muted that audio out, but you can it just shows the leadership of those 2 veterans already out there on the floor with these young players.
Yeah, I got to say, Paul, this Spurs team has a different feel about them. They don't seem as young and experienced as they were before. Now that they have these savvy veterans on the court, it seems like there's a different confidence level now when you're talking with these younger players and they're talking to the media and you're seeing them out there in training and whatnot. There's a different vibe, and that's something that's been sorely missed since the absence of some of the other Spurs veterans that have left and are no longer here. It seemed like this young core kind of was in a little bit of flux. And one of the key things that I took away from just listening to Chris Paul in particular talk was he said something that was very interesting to me. He's like, I want this Spurs team to kind of like slow down a little bit, and close games, and kind of just, don't get so overexcited. Don't get so rattled, with the game on the line and them, I guess, trying to do too much. And they're just kind of getting out of sorts, and they make silly mistakes, turning the ball over, squandering leads in crunch time, especially with a minute to go. The Spurs were right there in some of these games and they just made too many mistakes and the game got away from them. Now with CP3 here, he kind of wants to clean that up a little bit. And I'm excited about that because the Spurs if they had won a couple more of these games, I mean, we wouldn't have had Stephon Castle. It was all meant to be at the end of the day, but it shows that there is going to be some growth that Spurs fans, I think, are going to be very excited about this upcoming season. Well, what was your takeaway when he said that?
Yeah, I know that just reminded me of all those times last year. I'd write those tweets. The Spurs are leading by blah 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 by,
They're losing
by 15 points. They've led by 15 points in so many games, but then they end up they have like a losing record at some of the part. And this is actually something Zach Collins actually talked about on Wednesday, where he basically said, there were games when the Spurs would get big leads, and then the other team would come back and they just didn't know how to get stops, and then they'd end up losing the game. Or where if another team went on a big old run, the Spurs just had a tough time stopping them, and then the game was just over. And kind of what you said there, where Chris already knows that this one of their issues, this team is crunch time. The last 5 minutes of a game, and they kind of tense up. They have turnovers, rookie errors. Even Wemby today made that comment of making rookie mistakes at different times in games. And so that's something that Chris is definitely going to help them, just kind of ease them, kind of calm them down, get them patient up the floor. Even someone like Harrison Barnes is going to do that as well. That was something that Jeremy Sohan just said. Barnes has a very unique calmness about him when he's out on the floor.
Oh, now that you mentioned Jeremy Sohan, everybody saw his golden locks that he has. He's letting his hair grow out a little bit. What'd you think of the new do?
Yeah, he can go to two different dudes. So he's got he went on me today. He went with the cornrows, and then a few days later, he had like the afro sticking out. So it was a pink one. So he colored it pink. He says, and that just shows you that he's just more comfortable coming into this training camp. Whereas last year, he was having to be the point guard, a role he wasn't really comfortable with, and it was just a tough time for him. And now he says, he's more loose, he's more free, he just feels like just more comfortable now that he doesn't have that expectation of having to be the point guard. He can just focus on his natural role of power forward, and you see that just the fact he's back to changing his hairstyles and things like that.
Yeah, so that's the thing that I kind of noticed as well. Jeremy Sohan, a lot of Spurs fans love Jeremy Sohan. They're like, they love him because he reminds me of Dennis Rodman back in the day because of the hair. But they have two different styles of basketball, right, that they play. Mm-hmm. And I love Jeremy Sohan as a player. I think he does a lot of great things out there that go unnoticed on the court. And a lot of the casuals will go on and say they don't like Jeremy Sohan because, like my friend Michael Jimenez looks at the effective field goal shooting. But that doesn't dictate what happens in the context of the game itself. And I think that Jeremy Sohan does a lot of the little things, like I said, that go unnoticed. He moves great without the ball. I like all his backdoor cuts that he was able to get, those easy buckets last season. Moves well out there on the open court, and the only thing is, he's just not a very good shooter. But that's fine. That can go ahead and improve over time. And, I commend him for trying to go ahead and fix his shot from the free throw line. Everybody made fun of him and they thought it was silly, but you know what? It actually helped his shot. So if he can go ahead and come into training camp with the better shot from the free throw line, that makes me like Jeremy Sohan even more. What don't you like about Jeremy Sohan when he's willing to do all these little things to improve his game? And then you have the faction of Spurs fans that like to point out the little nuances there. Come on, that's silly, man. Go ahead and embrace Jeremy Sohan. One of the things that I wanted to talk about with you is the Spurs. They have a dilemma at the point guard position. It seems like they don't have enough minutes to go around right now.
Oh yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm.
And that's a good problem to have because last season they were relying solely on Tre Jones as a starting point guard. Now that you have CP3, for all intents and purposes, it hasn't been said, but we already know he loves his veterans, so he's probably going to play in the starting lineup there, and Tre Jones is going to be coming off the bench. Then we have Stephon Castle. How do you think this is going to play out? Because we can, at some point, have Tre Jones, right? And we can have Stephon Castle, or we could have CP3 and Tre Jones on the court at the same time. Spurs fans always think that they can only play one or the other, but that's not the case, right?
Yeah. So basically, like you said, it's a good problem to have. The fact that they went from a year ago to Jeremy Sohan as their point guard to start the year, and now all of a sudden they have too many point guards. So again, for most of the players, this is a good thing, except for maybe some players at the end of the roster, such as Blake Wesley, also a guy trying to make the team, is Malachi Flynn, who's on a training camp contract. But yeah, the way I see the rotations working out is, like you said, Chris Paul is going to be the starter. Tre Jones will be his backup, and then Stephon Castle is most likely going to play at the backup shooting guard spot. But I think the Spurs will let him bring up the ball sometimes, initiate some offense to get that experience. That way, he's always got Tre by his side. Plus, if you look at the data, the last 3 years, Chris has never played more than I think 60 games or 65 games. So he's gonna, just as a veteran player, the Spurs are gonna rest him some nights. There might be some nagging injuries that come along, just at the fact that he's a 39-year-old player coming in. So he's gonna miss some games. So then players will get elevated roles, such as Trey will probably start on those nights. Stephon will become now the backup point guard, and then Blake Wesley can finally get some minutes on those nights when one of the other 2 point guards are out. So I think they're gonna find a way to get Stephon his possessions as a point guard, but he will be next to either Chris or Trey in different kind of lineups.
Yeah, so that's interesting to me is that we're talking hypotheticals here because nothing's been set in stone. We haven't even played, the Spurs haven't even played, should I say, one game in training camp yet. That is going to be coming. They got their first preseason game that's going to be happening Monday, October the 7th at 7 p.m. Most of these games are going to be televised finally on the CW locally here in San Antonio.
Thank you.
I know. It's
I hate having to find random links or I think 1 year, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was a game or something.
App. Remember the phone? Yeah. Oh, it was awful.
I don't know what it was, but they had some of it was one of their preseason or one of the open scrimmages, and I don't have Facebook anymore, and so I actually had to create an account just to get watch the game on Facebook. So yeah, it's stuff like that. It's man, but I'm glad it's on TV.
I hated using the phone. Remember when we had to use the phone in the Spurs app to watch the games, and it's everybody was complaining. They're like, it's hard to go ahead and put it on the screen because you didn't have the Chromecast and all that kind of stuff. But you could still get it on the screen if you knew, but it was just making things a little bit more difficult. I'm happy now that the games are going to be locally televised on the CW, and I think they're going to be also shown on Cans 5 as well. So Spurs fans are going to be happy. They're going to be able to get their first look at this young Spurs core. Hopefully we get to go ahead and see a look at CP3, Harrison Barnes. The interesting dynamic that I have here with not only CP3, but with Harrison Barnes is Harrison Barnes going to be able to space the floor a little bit more for the San Antonio Spurs because he's such a prolific mid-range jump shooter, So he has a mid-range shot that he can knock down consistently, and I think that's going to make him dangerous and open the floor up a little bit more for the other players on the team, specifically Wembanyama. I want to see what he's able to do, and I'm looking forward to the Lob City, between him and CP3. I think that's going to be pretty fun for a Spurs fan. But one of the things I wanted to point out, now that we have, Harrison Barnes and CP3 on this team, I think Spurs fans haven't really thought about how is that going to change the style of play. Are they going to still want to get out and run? Or now that they have some of the veterans here, are they going to be more methodical in their approach? How do you think the style of play is going to play out this season?
I think they're gonna have a mixture of both, a little bit more. They'll still get on a run at times, and then plus they'll still have some half court offense, especially like you said in the fourth quarters when games get really close, get really tense. That's when you're really going to want to rely on Chris Paul's half court offense to run pick and roll. But regarding Chris, he's going to run a lot more pick and roll. Trey Jones mentioned how this is still a very much pick and roll heavy league. And then regarding Harrison, I think he's going to be okay in either whether they want to run or play in the half court because he's coming from a team that liked to get out and run in Sacramento. Led by De'Aaron Fox out there. They were a very fast paced team with Malik Monk out there as well. So I think Harrison can adapt pretty well. Chris will, if there's opportunities there, he'll push the ball. But like I said, a lot more times when he's on the floor, you're probably going to get more half court offense. Especially they're going to need that in those fourth quarters when games get close.
Yeah. So another thing that I was going to ask you about here, because I'm asking questions, man, because you were there and you got to see all these players, is how did Wemby look? Because I know that he's added a few pounds of muscle here. So everybody's showing the pictures, out here on social media of the jacked up Wemby, bulking Wemby. And, and everybody's like, well, he's gained some pounds, and how is that going to affect his longevity as a player? Because we know notoriously when you have big men like that, knees, the legs, as far as not the legs, but as far as their feet, become a problem later on in their career. But Wemby does a great job of keeping himself healthy, keeping his body, in perfect peak condition, and he does a lot of stretching, which is something that I've never seen a big man of that size do before. So how did he look to you now that, he's bulked up a little bit?
I mainly saw, I got a picture of him when he was doing the photo shoot next to Devin at one point. So I really didn't see his lower body, his leg area. I mainly just saw his upper body, but just looked like more tone, more frame. There's more there on his frame, upper body wise. And that's kind of something that you kind of heard the players talk about already in open practices, is that he's bulked up a little bit where it's harder to move him off of his spots. Zach Collins specifically mentioned how now he's not really taking those fadeaway jumpers, that he's able to get his correct release and his posture the right way when he takes those jump shots. And then Victor also mentioned how, he's really working on trying to finish near the rim, because obviously that's going to be the easiest place for him to score because he's so tall. So that's something that he's been working on as well.
Yeah. So one of the things with Wemby though is I think he needs to still work on his 3-point shooting because I mean it's not bad, but it could be much to be desired. A little bit as far as an improvement there. And one of the things that I saw, I don't know if you noticed the same thing last year, is when he's trying to go ahead and do a pull up jumper, a pull up three, right?
Mm-hmm.
It seems like he's so long that that's like a detriment to him. I think he needs to move back from the 3-point line a little bit and take that shot because he is so long. Even though he's further away, I think he's going to have a more, and let's say, chance of making that three. His accuracy will be higher as far as his 3-point shooting percentage. Do you think because he's bulked up a little bit more and he has a little bit more knowledge in year two, you think his 3-point shooting will be much to be improved this year?
I think it should see a little bit of an increase just because of the fact that I think he's going to get set up a little bit better when he's open on his pick and pops, on his spot up threes. I think those will be possessions. Just the fact Chris Paul's out there now, Harrison can throw up some passes, Stephon Castle, those kind of players. So he should be getting better delivery on where the pass is coming into him. I don't know if he has to go to so many pull up threes like he did a year ago. He actually shot better as a pull up three shooter, if I recall the data, compared to spot up numbers. But yeah, I don't think he has to do that as often because he has now more playmakers around him in this coming season. And one thing I want to give him credit to is that for a young player, only 20 years old, he's very analytically savvy. He knows, like he's seen the data. He will say, I know that rim shots, 3-point shots are the most important shots in basketball right now. I know that we got to try to limit mid rangers as much as possible because they're analytically the worst shots you can take in a game. And so that's something that he actually comments on, is the fact that he knows he's either supposed to try to score at the rim or from the 3-point line.
Yeah. So moving forward here, and getting away from Wemby a little bit because I want to focus more on some of the younger players. We had a lot of younger players that really played some minutes last season. And this season, because we have a good problem to have, you have veterans, your lineup's going to change, your starting five, your second unit's going to change, and that's going to leave not enough minutes to go around. So now that we kind of got a glimpse of some of these younger players, what do you think is going to happen with them as far as how the minutes are going to be distributed between them?
They're going to have to learn that, yeah, like you're right. Like they're not going to get as many minutes as they had. Some of the players who played a lot more, maybe somebody like Soan, like Kellin Johnson, those kind of veteran players who are still young but have been on the team for a number of years. And also, players who got real minutes last year, such as Blake Wesley, such as Malachi Branham, Julian Champagnie, right? Those guys, they're not guaranteed those minutes now. They actually got to compete for them this coming training camp and preseason. And for some of these wings, I mean, there are going to be some minutes at least because Devin Vassell's injury. But once the team's fully healthy, a few weeks into the season when Vassell makes his return, I mean, those minutes are going to be gone completely. And so you're right. I mean, it's really about, it's really just a battle here in terms of, fighting for not only a roster spot, but also for, a place in the rotation because, they're not going to bump out some of those other players like Chris Paul, like Wemby, those guys, Jeremy Sohan, those guys already have their roles set. It's going to be about, where those extra minutes at. And yeah, that's a good thing to have, I guess, like you said, like to have that competitiveness here coming into training camp.
Yeah, because even though these players are young and they're kind of fan favorites in a way, Spurs fans are enamored with them. They're more of an insurance policy. So if your vets get injured, you're going to have somebody that can come in and, be a body that take up those minutes and fill the roster spot. Same thing in the second unit. Or if you're going to go ahead and give somebody a night off because you got to rest them over the 82 game season, that's going to be where I believe these young players are going to be able to get some minutes and maybe shine a little bit, given the limited minutes that they do get. So Spurs fans will get excited about that from time to time. But another thing that I've been noticing here is I'm excited just overall with the Spurs team itself. We're entering a new era here, Wemby year 2. There's been a lot of talk here with Spurs fans about how much this team is going to be able to turn things around with Wemby going into year 2, and now with the addition of CP3 and Harrison Barnes. Now, I've already gone on record and I've given my prediction about how many wins this Spurs team is going to be expected to get this season. I'm thinking it's going to be somewhere realistically between the numbers of 37 and 35. If they go and exceed that, to me, that's exceeding expectations. Even if the team got 43 wins, I think that'd be enough to kind of flirt with the play-in. But in the West, it's not going to be enough to get you into the play-in. What are your expectations as far as a prediction, should I say, for the upcoming season as far as their win total?
I'm kind of right there with you. I haven't finished I finished my Eastern Conference prediction, and I was 2 games over 500 for the Spurs, and that's the easy conference. I mean, they only got 2 games against some of those bad teams. So I'm with you where I'm kind of right now. I'm in that 35 to like 38 win range, because somewhere around there. The thing is, man, they play in the West. That's as good as, I mean, they have gotten better. I'll admit that they've gotten better. They should be. It's just that, man, they don't have any easy teams this year. Like the only teams out west that are easy are Portland and Utah. That's it. Like, the Clippers, maybe if Kawhi doesn't come back in time, but that's about it. 3 teams that you're better than. Because I mean, Houston's still really good. Golden State, the Lakers, Memphis is back to being a juggernaut now that Ja's completely healthy and they added Zach Edey. So like, the West is it's just the fact that they're in that conference. And so again, they're going to win more than 22 games from last year. I think they're going to be in every game, and it's going to, again, come down to those final few minutes. How do they respond there? But I see kind of like right in that play-in bubble, and maybe I wouldn't say right now that they're going to make it through the play-in tournament, but you kind of right below those teams that maybe finish right outside of it. So again, it's really early. I'd say about 35, 38 wins, and that's still improvement compared to where they were a year ago. The fact that they're actually fighting for a play-in spot could be something else. Unless, like I said, some other West teams have some injury issues or chemistry issues, then there's a chance that the Spurs might be able to leap up even further. But again, that you're really waiting on hypotheticals in those cases.
Yeah, so the way that the West is stacking up right now, you're probably going to have your usual suspects. I still predict that OKC will be in there in the mix. The same thing with Minnesota. Golden State will probably be there with the Lakers vying for that final roster spot as far as the playoffs go. Denver's going to be in there. You got the Dallas Mavericks. And the big question marks to me is like, how good is this Suns team going to be?
I think,
what are they going to do?
No, I think they're still good. I mean, maybe not top 4, but definitely like 6, 5 through like 8 range. That's guaranteed for them. I mean, they got some better veteran pieces. Plus, they got Tyus Jones, the point guard there, while having most. They
have talent. They have talent, but it just seems like sometimes they just can't put things together. They were almost like not even that long ago. They were over here in the finals. And
yes,
and now it's like they couldn't get back there again. It's hard to get there, but with all the talent they have, it's just kind of, they haven't met, to me, the expectation. Then you have, the Utah Jazz. Of course, we know they're not going to be very good. Memphis Grizzlies, man. This team is a big question mark for me in the West. What do you think they're going to do?
I think they're going to be good again. I think they're going to be kind of in that top 6 range, anywhere in there, just because if they can just stay healthy and as long as Ja can stay on the court, I mean, that's a very good ball club, the Memphis Grizzlies. So I really expect them to be really good again this year. Plus, they added some depth there with Zach Edey, and everyone should be healthy. Marcus Smart, Jaren Jackson Jr., and then a lot of their role players. They're a team who, they have like, players at the end of the bench who end up turning into really good role players. And they're returning fully healthy, except for I think one player got hurt. Gigi Jackson, I believe it was, recently got injured. But aside from that, I mean, they should be really good.
What about the experiment that's going to happen now in Minnesota? Now that the Big Cat's gone over to the Knicks, now you're going to have Randall and you're going to have DiVincenzo. To me, it just seems like Minnesota got smaller because they're going to go with not Cat, but Anthony Towns now, right? They're going to go with Ant-Man now. So now they're going to go with the Ant-Man. And now that they're going to be playing that small ball, my thing is, yes, they do have some size still with Rudy Gobert, but they're going to be a small team. They're going to be fast. They're going to be athletic, but they're still going to be a small team. So if they go up against a team that has a big man or athletic big men, that might give them some trouble, especially when they go up against teams that have some length. How well do you think this Minnesota Timberwolves team is going to be moving forward?
I think they're still going to be, a top 5 team out west as well. Maybe not top 3 anymore, maybe they could still sniff top 3. Definitely not better than OKC, but I just think they still have the player who I don't really, I've never been a fan of really is Julius Randle. I just don't like his game, the way he plays, more so like that half court, very much like post up kind of offense. So, but the fact that they have Ant, they have Rudy Gobert still, they have Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid was really good in the playoffs. They just have a lot of depth on this team as well. And so they added Joe Ingles, a shooter from Australia, over the offseason. So I just think that they still have too many good pieces, and just the fact that Ant can really take over a game on night-to-night basis, I still think they're a top 3 West team out there.
Yeah, so that's the way the West is stacking up. It's going to be hard for the Spurs. They're going to have to go ahead and contend with some very good teams. But the thing is, the trajectory for the Spurs, they are getting better. We saw that in years past, the West was kind of surpassing the Spurs in terms of talent. But now the disparity between those two is getting smaller and smaller, with the Spurs getting better and better as far as their roster. They still have a lot of picks to come, and some of them might not convey, but nonetheless, they still have a lot of picks. And that's the thing that's kind of good, but not good, because when you get picks, you have to make roster spots. So that means that the more people that you get in this draft moving forward, where are you going to put them all? That means you're going to have to let go of some of these players again that the fans get enamored with, and that's just the nature of things. So moving forward here, I know we can talk about hypotheticals all we want, but right now, what does the Spurs cap space look like in case they did want to make a trade as they move further into the season?
I mean, they're not in the luxury tax, so they're over the cap, but they have room to make trades. You're right, like they can take in players into their that not cap space, but that window for the luxury
Yeah.
tax line. So they're not even close to that. So they're okay to take in big contracts. The issue would be for them is who are they trading with, and then like those teams are probably all over like the first or second apron, and there's limitations on who they're trading with, but probably for the Spurs' sake, they're not in any kind of danger of like going past the luxury tax line, so they can take in a big contract. It just depends on who are they sending out, and can that other team fit in some players in that.
Yeah, the numbers have to match as far in terms of salary. So that's the big question mark there. And I know that a lot of the news has been Kellin Johnson, and I like Kellin Johnson. He's slimmed down, he's looking better out there. But his name always comes up, it seems like, when you're trying to go ahead and have the Spurs thrown in with talking with other teams in terms of trade. I hope that we can keep Keldon because I think he's a great player and he does great things for the community. But in terms of trades, I mean, his number is attractive as far as the contract goes because it's getting smaller as he gets near the end of that contract. So that's why I believe his name comes up so often in these trade speculations,
Yeah, and for him, I mean, it's just been a tough go around the last few years, just because he doesn't really have like a position that like you can just say that he plays perfectly, or the position that he does play, which is like kind of like that backup kind of power forward role. He's more like a slashing, driving kind of player who needs contact at the rim. His 3-point shot is kind of come and gone, and on this team now with Wemby, with Vassell, with all these guys, Harrison Barnes, there just aren't those kind of possessions for him, and that's why they had to put him in the second unit where he can kind of be a little bit more like the 6-man create for himself, a little bit more there. But overall, like you just don't know where long term where he fits on the team. So that's like you're right. Where like he has the attractive contract there, like 17, 18 million. Plus another team maybe needs that kind of a player. But right now, again, on this Spurs roster, I'm not sure that they quite need that kind of a player right now in terms of the role that he plays. And so that's why I think he's always going to be, his name will always be floated in trade rumors until, his next contract.
Yeah, but nonetheless, Paul, we're going to be excited because Spurs basketball is going to be back on the screen starting Monday. So I know I'm excited. You're excited. But some news that broke earlier today is something that I wanted to talk with you about. Everybody knows about Bill Land, and Sean Elliott and their chemistry, and Bill Land's voice right there, announcing games with the great Sean Elliott. But the problem is that as of late, Bill Land has had some health concerns. He's had some problems, and that's kind of put him out of being able to announce the whole season and be there for every single game and whatnot. We wish him the best. He was a great voice, a great chemistry that he had with Sean Elliott, but it was announced today that the Spurs did hire Jacob Artobi as the new play-by-play announcer. And I know that a lot of Spurs fans don't know a lot about him. I know that he was calling games over with the Austin Spurs in that G League with another friend of ours. So the thing is how is he gonna fit in this whole announcing thing? That as far as the chemistry goes, I've heard his voice and he's not bad, but a lot of Spurs fans don't know a lot about him. I mean, we're just gonna to me, it's just kind of wait and see and see what happens. We're gonna get his first taste of what he can do in these Spurs preseason games. But what are your first thoughts on like Jacoby Artobi?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I haven't heard any of his. I can't recall hearing his voice as well in different broadcasts based on his experience from where he's coming from. But I mean, the big important thing is that he just has to build that chemistry with Sean Elliott. That's the big thing, and also Dan Weiss, who kind of comes in with like the stats and stuff during the broadcast and does like some of the sideline reporting at times. So again, if he could just build good chemistry with Sean and Dan, I think he's going to be okay. I mean, obviously he's got big shoes to fill in terms of Bill. I mean, Bill was so unique. He was awesome voice. Just the way he basically made a lot of those those key phrases for the Spurs, so that's one thing, like just kind of over the years, just kind of stuff that he would yell out and everything, and his kind of own catchphrases. So again, those are big shoes to fill. But again, if he could just build that cohesion and make it a very entertaining kind of basketball game to watch every night, whenever the Spurs have games like on Bally's or Ken's or wherever, they're commentating, he and Sean. So again, I'm eager to see. My ears are open to hear how it goes, and let's see if it's an enjoyable broadcast. And if it's not, then I'll probably just put on like, you know, a podcast just while I'm watching. But no, it should be fine. They should be good.
Yeah.
Because I like to hear Sean Elliott's knowledge at all times, no matter what. He does a good job of you know, bringing back stories and also you know, breaking down different kind of plays and things like that.
So I'm going to go ahead and bring up something here as we start bringing the show to a close here. One of the things that's always been, you know, really big here with Spurs fans is how they can go ahead and ingest, how they're going to be able to watch, should I say, the games moving forward. The landscape is changing. You know, the advent of streaming services and them jockeying for position here, and you know, they're bidding billions of dollars for the rights to even, you know, showcase these games. You have Amazon Prime that's going to go ahead and enter the fray because they're making a deal with Bally Sports. Bally Sports has kind of been in some trouble, you know, filing for bankruptcy and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it seems like they're still trying to, you know, stay afloat here. And now that they're trying to go ahead and ink this deal, where they've inked this deal out with Amazon Prime, what that means moving forward for Spurs fans is the way they're going to be able to see these games. So now you had to go ahead and pay $20, something like that. Probably going to be an increase now moving forward into the season. It used to be $20 a month if you wanted to go ahead and watch your Spurs as far as your regional sports coverage here in the great state of Texas. Now that they've inked the deal with Amazon Prime, a lot of Amazon Prime users, you're not going to be able to watch these games, I don't think, this season. I think it's going to convey next season. And Amazon Prime users, I think they're under the impression that because they already have Prime, that they're going to be able to watch the Bally Sports, regional sports, you know, in their area for free. And I don't think that's going to be the case. What I think Amazon's going to wind up doing is they're going to say, you can watch your regional sports. We're going to have these regional sports packages, but you're going to still have to pay $20-something a month in lieu of what you're already paying for Amazon Prime. So if you do the math, Amazon Prime's like maybe $20 on its own. So you're going to pay $20 a month. That's a total of $40 for you to be able to watch the Spurs on Amazon Prime. Now, if you just get the standalone app, it's $20 on its own. The other way that you're going to be able to watch the Spurs play is if you already have like DirecTV streaming, for example, because they include Bally Sports. I believe Spectrum Cable here locally also includes the Bally Sports regional sports package. But a lot of the other streaming services like Hulu, Fubo, YouTube TV, for example, they drop Bally Sports because they don't want to have to pay that exuberant amount of money that they're asking and pass that off onto the consumer. Now we have a new conglomerate that's entered the fray here. I don't know if you heard about this, but this is important. It's an important because this is going to have an impact, a dramatic impact, I think, in pricing moving forward. And that is DirecTV has acquired Dish Network. And along with acquiring Dish Network, they also acquired Sling TV, which is owned by Dish Network. So what that means in layman's terms is DirecTV is now going to be one of the biggest streaming services or biggest streaming providers out there. And they're already kind of pricey, you know, because what they're charging for their packages is quite more expensive than what you're seeing everywhere else. But they have a lot of sports that they're, you know, putting in these other packages. Their mid-tier and their top-tier packages have a lot of sports that they pack in. Now that they've acquired Dish Network, expect those prices to go up even more. What does that mean in long terms for the consumer? It means that as these, let's say, 4-letter networks like ESPN, you know, you have your TNTs, for example, they got the 1 year left on their contract, right? Now that you have Amazon and you're going to have NBC now acquiring these games, now that they pay more money to see these, you know, so they can showcase these games on their respective streaming services, that means that the consumer probably over the next year or so, they're going to wind up paying a lot more to watch not only Spurs games, but sports in general. So even though that people were saying before, hey, we're going to cut the cord because essentially it was cheaper, it's starting to change. And now what's going to happen is that they gave you a little taste of what freedom was away from cable. But in the long run, even though you're not having a set-top box, you're not having to pay, you know, all these other fees that they get you for, at the end of the day, the bottom line price to watch sports is going to get more expensive. I mean, just out of the data that I've given you, I mean, what are your thoughts on the landscape of the streaming services now?
Well, that's kind of that was my situation for this upcoming season, where I've had DirecTV stream, and obviously, you know, it is very pricey. See where I live, I don't live in San Antonio anymore, so I have to get, you know, pay as much as I can just to get the Spurs games. Obviously, I cover them for, you know, that's one of my jobs here, and so you know, I was actually trying to get out of that contract and try to go find you know, I was actually looking at YouTube TV. Well, like you just said, I found out that YouTube TV does not have a contract with Bally Sports, and so I was like, oh, well, I can't leave them for that. And then as you were talking about, maybe Amazon in the future, I already have an Amazon subscription, but maybe like you're saying, maybe they're going to charge more just to get Bally's on there. So yeah, I mean, like you're right. I mean, obviously it's expensive, and that's kind of where like you kind of have to make that. You're gonna have to make that financial decision of, do you want to invest in? continue to pay for access to the games, and like I said, for me, I have to have the Spurs games. I need to watch them as part of what I do, and so I'm unfortunately gonna have, that's part of my what I make financially is gonna have to go into that bill monthly for DirecTV Stream or whoever has the games.
I was gonna ask you, do you have the Bally Sports app? Is it available for you?
I don't, but I think because I have DirecTV, I have all the Bally Sports channels because they come into my DirecTV package. But I think also if I use the app, I can sign in with my DirecTV login, and it'll give me access, because I remember watching them out of town and somewhere else one time.
So I was going to say maybe Bally Sports, the standalone a la carte, might be an option for you, because I know just by itself it's $20. But the problem is that the app on the phone, and sometimes even on smart TVs, it works when it wants to. So you'll be watching, then all of a sudden it crashes. Then you're trying to get back in and you're missing key moments of the game, or you missed a play, and you're like, that's why I'm watching the game, and that's why you're paying, so much every month, so you can watch these moments and experience them in real time. And when things like that happens, it really upsets the fan base. And that's what's been going on with the Bally Sports app. I know a lot of people have been complaining about it. It doesn't seem to be getting any better, but they're still charging you $20 a month, so that's the nature of things right now. But hopefully things will get better. You'll have more choices as far as being able to watch the San Antonio Spurs. But for right now, I mean, it's either NBA League TV, DirecTV Stream, Bally Sports, getting that a la carte, or going ahead and going with maybe another service provider that might be able to offer those regional sports packages for you. But Paul, what do you have coming up for your podcast here?
Actually, I have a podcast dropping this Friday morning. I just recorded it, so it's just kind of what you and I talked about here, where I kind of just took listened to all the audio and quotes from the players and Coach Pop, and for the past week, and I kind of just put them into a podcast episode of just kind of giving my big takeaways for the team. And I'm really eager for Monday to start, when we actually get some real preseason games going on. Because like, I'll tell you one thing, Coach Pop and the players did not want to tell us anything about the lineups that are going to be featured. They all the players kind of just pushed that question aside, and even Pop gave a very sarcastic answer when asked about what the lineups might look like. So aside from saying that Wemby's for sure going to start, so so I can't wait till Monday just to kind of see what some of the lineups look like. And we do know that preseason games, some players are going to miss games from here and there. So I'm just eager for Monday to get here now at this point.
Yeah. Hey, I was going to ask you before I let you go, are you going to be around for the Silver and Black scrimmage? It's going to be happening October the 19th.
I won't be there for that one. No, I won't. I was just here in San Antonio for me today. Actually, I might, because I do have to come back. I have to make one more trip to San Antonio. So who knows? Maybe I'm not going to guarantee it's a no yet. So
you're not going to say you guarantee it. Okay. Yeah. But, I put my name in the hat, to go ahead and see if I can get those free Silver and Black scrimmage tickets. So they give you 4 total,
Okay.
So
okay.
Yeah, I'll keep you in the loop, Paul. If you're going to be in town, maybe we sneak you in.
It's okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's episode of the Area 210 podcast. Make sure you go and follow Paul. He's a great follow on the X. Make sure you subscribe to his new podcast and support him. And make sure you're going ahead and following us on the X as well. You can follow us at Area 210 podcast. Paul, where can they follow you on the X?
On X, at Paul Garcia NBA, and then also at the Spot Up Shot.
There you go. There you know how to go follow Paul. He's great when it comes to analytical data. You love his spreadsheets, and you also like to hear him talk about the cap space and what Spurs fans can expect in case trades are going to be made this upcoming season, should I say. So for Paul Garcia, this is Joe Garcia. Thank you all for watching another area of the Area 210 podcast. And like we always say, spread the love, stop the hate, be kind. We're out. Peace.